Aloha from Canada. I'm just thrilled to be designing for you today and be able to create with some of the most beautiful Hawaiian grown flowers and foliage. My name is Brenna Quan, and I have always had a big love for Hawaii. I've had many experiences in the Aloha State previously, but one of the most memorable was going to the Big Island as a Canada reverse trade guest for the Mid-Pac Conference in Kona back in 2017. And what made this experience so incredible, so magical, was getting to focus solely on the phenomenal flowers, not only at the convention, but at the farms. We were greeted there by the warm and ever so laid back personalities that grow them, who have immeasurable pride about what they do. And that, in combination with the hospitality of the community as a whole, made it an absolute dream trip. And since then, I've somehow, by the grace of Mother Universe, gotten lucky enough to have been visiting every year since. And that's pretty much thanks to your respected International Ambassador for Hawaiian-grown products and my friend and mentor, Hitomi Gilliam. Even though this year is just a bit different, I am still filled with gratitude and so much joy and the aloha spirit with the piece of Hawaii that was so generously sent to us in the form of all this lush neotropica gorgeousness that surrounds us. So mahalo to all involved, especially our dear friends who make up the Hawaiian Floriculture and Nursery Association. So Hawaii is a blending of cultures, as is where I was born, Vancouver, British Columbia. It's certainly a melting pot, and so naturally we see a lot of fusion. Fusion restaurants, fusion fashion, and hey, my keiki are even hapas. So I dreamt up an island vibe meets Pacific Northwest vibe concept, or maybe you'd call it tropical rainforest meets West Coast evergreen forest. Does that sound interesting to you? I'm a big fan of repurposing materials, so I gathered up these cedar planks I had to construct my own vessels. These are actually roof shingles from the hardware store. We do have some magnificent cedars in our preserved areas, and whenever I catch the scent in the air, it's very much home to me. So to begin this structure, I need to have a base, which is a small little piece of wood and a couple of panels of the shingles attached to each side and screwed in, so you have a nice solid base there. Then we can take some 1x1s and chop them up into little pieces as added spacers to begin the layering. Now with this one I've begun here, I have a few more layers to add, and I'm just going to simply use a hot glue gun to attach the spacer. And then we begin to see layers upon layers. I'm going to add one more to this side. Now look at this fun piece. I'm including these little fun details and nuances to really bring in that Pacific Northwest forest kind of vibe. Now you can see that I have added some details of these foraged materials. I love foraging. We have mosses, little mushrooms, and some lichen as well. Now that we've created the layers to the vessel, we have to add a water source. So in this case, I'm going to be using 4-inch water tubes. Now because the wood pieces, the spacers, were the same diameter as the tubes, tension will pretty much hold it in place. And if it doesn't, if it's a little loose, a simple fix is a dab with a hot glue gun. And you'll notice I'm inserting it in an angle, and that's so that the flowers can nicely hover above the vessel. Now a little bit of water, and we'll be set to add the flowers. Now before the flowers, I have to do our fusion, right? And so we have this lovely ficus root from our beautiful Hawaii boxes. And so I'm just gonna let the roots dance, and really I am creating some movement and lines throughout the piece. Besides that, I have to add this passion vine. As you can see, I've taken the leaves off to expose all the fun little whimsical tendrils. And I am going to insert the vine in water to keep it nice and fresh. And look, I can even use this perfect little natural notch in the wood to make it look like it's actually growing. There we go. So I hope to give this design a synergy by including a multitude of foliages. While crisscrossing lines, we have some foraged fern from our forests here. I often pick these up when I go on my hikes. So there's the beginning, and because the tubes are on an angle, you can see how it lays really nicely over the top. Now, ooh, this fluffy fern. This is something that as soon as it comes out of the box, it's a big showstopper. I just love it. So we definitely want to include this in the piece. Now, the greening just helps me begin a base for the design. It's creating some form and just a nice feel of the fusion of the tropical forests. Add in definitely something that screams tropics, which is the Monstera. We're going to add this off to the side here. Again, using the angles to our advantage. Now, I think this is a great beginning to the design. Maybe a few more grasses here to give it that loose feel. There. So pink is my color. Various shades, all sorts of shades. You can see my hair. But when I opened my box, of course, I was so thrilled to see the beautiful rose of anthurium. This obake is one of my favorites. So I'm gonna start with my favorites. Now I'm just going to put a couple of them in this design because I am going to fuse it together with the temperates. Make that a little bit tighter. Okay. Now also, these really, really sweet pink ginger, they're gonna add some tropical character as well to my design. Now these bring in such lovely texture and interest to a design, I think. And I'm still keeping with crisscrossing lines to make it very wild, just like we would see in our forests. Now adding in some temperate flowers is going to give me a lot of fun texture and contrast. So I picked out these beautiful Blushing Bride Protea. And I'm simply going to add these in as well. I think the layering of textures add some really beautiful contrast to the design. Maybe one more on this side. And now I also have a darker contrasting color as well. So all shades of pink. These Scabiosa were grown here locally. So we truly are fusing both regions, the tropics and the Pacific Northwest. So I'll tuck these in to the design to just give it some nice airiness and bounce with its delicate stems. And a little more of the darker burgundy color in this sedum will hopefully round out this piece. So I'm just going to spin this around so I can add a few more final details to this side. Now we have lovely, lovely snowberries here in our region. So I want to add a few of those because of the texture. It's just a really fun bauble. And it adds just a nice little whimsical touch as well. I really think that this is a compatible combination of tropicals and temperate flowers. As for local weddings and events here in our area, it can really work with honoring our own locale, as well as marrying it with that exotic look from the islands we so long to vacation on, especially in the midst of these times. Now, look how we can add an elevated piece with this foot to fit different design settings as a group centerpiece or a long, narrow tablescape. Because of their nature, they are so incredibly easy to pack for transport with very little spillage. Also extremely lightweight, giving such an ease to carrying around and handling. So I hope you enjoyed my storytelling fusion design and that you'll consider some inspired blendings of your own. Now the bouquet I want to create for you today is actually quite simple in its look, a little more controlled than our wild and lush table pieces. And I'm going to start out with a simple base platform. I'm using a repurposed shipping box from Hawaii. And the first thing I've done is cut out my desired shape, and now I'm going to cut out a smallish hole for the flowers in the middle to be threaded through. Now I've made a rectangular shape. I guess it's a parallelogram. Cutting my desired shape first. Now what I've done is wired and taped together some florist wires. This is 20 gauge, and I'm going to create a handle. So making sure that the striations are going vertically, I'm now going to thread these wires through and simply bend it towards to make a handle. And I'll continue to do that for the other 4 corners. And now we simply tie those together and we have a handle. I'll take a few more of the covered wires and actually thread through the sides of the cardboard. And the purpose of this is that I want to create a little bit of curvature with my platform. So pushing the wires through enables me to manipulate it so that I can create a bend in the corner like so. I will also do the same with the other side, the other corner. I had in mind to begin with that I wanted to do a cascade shape, a cascade design. And so that determined the shape that I wanted to do for my platform. Now the finished design I have covered in foliage. I started out with the back with some foraged magnolia leaves, and the front we had some beautiful calathea leaves that had these really, really neat color patterned here in pink. And of course, you know, pink is my color. And just to give it interest, I've used an alocasia leaf backwards because I wanted to really accentuate the veins in the backs of the leaves. And I think it gives it a really interesting platform. Now, to adhere the foliage, you can use a cold glue, but my glue of choice for this particular design is Super 77. And this is a spray adhesive that you can get from any hardware store. What you want to do is actually spray the surface of the cardboard first, let that get tacky, and do the exact same thing with the backs of the leaves. Once those have dried and gotten that tackiness, then you can start applying to the surface. And any little small corners that may be lifting, I just used a little bit of cold glue and simply cut around the sides, and there you have your platform. So now that we have our stage, we're ready for the performers. Before I start designing with flowers, I want to add a little bit of interest and structure with this forged branch to give a nod to our Pacific Northwest landscape. I'll just lay it across like so, like a branch that's broken off and gently landed on the rooftop, as we often find here. I can simply add a stem of tape-covered wire from the center to join the stem base. Now, as you can see, I've wired and taped all of my blooms so that they can be easily manipulated in the positioning of choice. They also keep the bouquet handle quite narrow and easy to carry. Now I'm going to start with a base layer. I'll use some grasses with this beautiful curve to keep with the lines of my cascade. It's a gentle cascade. Now the texture really lends itself to the feel and the flow. Now see, because I've wired the stems, once I insert, I can easily manipulate it. If I want this going down, and this one a little farther up, and my final one that I have to create the layers. And now I can start with a base layer. I've got to start with this anthurium. And part of the purpose is to get it started in the center as my focal and to give this gaping hole some coverage. And the color of the anthurium you can see being pulled out of the grasses and even these little nuances of the Japanese maple. And this, I believe the name of it is the Mira Obake, and it's just wonderful in its curvatures. The color of the spadix is a real plus on this one. As you can see, it's pink as well. And so it blends in with the color palette. Now I'm just going to pull this one a little bit farther back so that the grasses can dance and hover above. Again, because of the wired flowers, if by chance later on I change my mind and want it to go just a little bit of direction, a little bit different direction, I can go ahead and do that. I'm going to keep going with a few anthurium here. The pink tulip anthurium are just lovely for this type of application in a bouquet because of their size. It's just a little more delicate for a bouquet. Now the wonderful thing about the lasting ability of anthurium, I have to tell you a story about a floral exhibit that I did that had to last for 4 weeks. So clearly I was in there every other day, making sure the flowers looked fresh and refresh whatever I needed to. And I've got to tell you, the one flower that stayed the entire exhibit was the anthurium. And to be exact, it was the green Midori anthurium. Unbelievable. I'm a believer for life. Okay, I'm gonna stop with the anthurium for a moment and just move to a different texture and different color. I have these gorgeous garden, these are actually spray roses. This is a garden spray rose, grown locally here. And I'm keeping with the line of the bouquet to cascade a little bit downwards. Did you notice I made the hole for the insertions just slightly off center towards the cascading end in hopes to be able to keep that balance going so it doesn't feel too heavy on one side. We're just pulling that focal over just a wee bit. It's wonderful. The colors that you can see in these roses, it really touches on the pinks and the corals and this deeper salmon tone of the anthurium. How about for another texture, we bring in some blushing bride protea. That's fun in the texture, and to me, it kind of screams bridal. It's a blushing bride protea. Now, being wired, you can see that they dance around a little bit. And I love to dance, and I love my flowers to dance as well. Okay, let's get some more cascading down on this side. I find that the blushing bride actually lasts pretty well, even in this situation, without water. But as we know, for a bride, it just needs to last long enough through the event. And some more local beauties that we have is the astrantia. And I've actually clustered these in its natural cluster to wire and tape. And that's to give some movement as well, keep the movement, as well as some coverage. And I really wanted to bring that color in as well for a little more contrast, so we're not just a straight pink. Now, astrantia comes in many different colors, many different pink tones and white. I absolutely love this burgundy tone. So whenever I see it at the market, I tend to snatch it up. Just like Nerean lilies, also one of my favorite, pink. I love that we can layer in this bouquet and keep it feeling light. In contrast to the base. The base is quite heavy, but it acts as the backdrop to our stage for our performers. And it is a very lightweight bouquet for a bride to handle. Okay, a few more stems here. and I'm feeling pretty good about it. I do love the color of the pink tones in the calathea. That's exciting to me. And so why not answer nature and combine it how it should with other pinks. Now I could see this bouquet for an adventurous bride or somebody who really likes to travel and they want little bits and pieces from their adventures put into their bouquet. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have this exciting opportunity of designing for you all using such sensational product from the place that will always own a piece of my heart. And how I long to find myself there in person again someday, enjoying farm tours, flower friends, and some of the best malasadas and mochi the islands have to offer. So mahalo to all those who made this virtual gathering possible, as well as all the amazing events in the years past that bring us all together. Flower Ohana. It's the synergy between the farmers and florists nowadays that is ever so important in the evolution of our uniquely special industry. And last but not least, thank you to Hitomi for bringing your Canadian Ohana together, and Colin for producing what will hopefully be a video to bring you some inspiration from our Pacific Northwest corner of the world. Aloha!